Good evening, everyone. My name is Mariam Olorundare, Country Director, Passion of Hope International, CEO, Marifa Limited, and member of INAT. I'm really excited to be here moderating this discussion, and we are thrilled to have you join us for the 5th seminar in the INAT webinar. So you're all welcome. I'm trying to multitask here, so the screen on my system is actually all occupied trying to share the screen with you. So, but I need you to know that we have just 90 minutes together, but my goal is to make this worthwhile. We are going to pack a lot of insight into this minute, and I look forward to your contributions. I don't know how many of us are online now, but I would like us to come on the mic and try to say welcome in our local languages. Can I get a hello from somewhere? Can you guys hear me?
Hello,
Okay.
Mariam.
All right, thank you. So please, if you can,
Hello, Maria.
we can all say welcome together in our local languages to start the discussion. That would be nice. So let's go. 1, 2, 3. Ẹ káàbọ̀.
Hello.
Karibu.
Yeah, good to have you all. Thank you. And I welcome you once again to this session titled Revolutionizing Agriculture Through Appropriate Technology. Before I introduce 3 of our discussants, I would like to welcome the president of the International Network on Appropriate Technology, INAT, to give us his opening remarks. Please welcome Professor John Tremble. Hello, Prof. Can you hear me?
Yes,
All
Mary.
right, please, could you go ahead and let's have your opening remarks. Thank you.
Yes, I'd like to welcome, first of all, welcome your team, Miriam. I think this is excellent that you're doing a team effort. This will be the first webinar where we actually involve the team, and I'm excited about that having a new dimension to what we're doing. Just a brief overview. INAT, as we refer to, the International Network on Appropriate Technology, has been doing work for over 20 years now. We are a nonprofit organization that's registered in Maryland and the USA, and we have a network, a membership that spans both sides of the ocean. Has members primarily in Africa and in the US, but also in a number of other locations from Guyana to Europe. So we're proud to be an international organization, not in name, but in membership. Briefly, this is the 5th webinar that we've organized. The first webinar we had in November of last year when we kicked off this series. It's a monthly series that we do every second Thursday. And the first webinar was on the history and development of appropriate technology. It provided the background on why we exist. The second webinar was on military technology, conquest mentality, and what we must do. It was a good seminar to sort of explain the negative nature of technology that's so dominant and why we have to change the course of that. The third webinar was very exciting because this was an introduction to our Appropriate Technology Manifesto. This is a work that we were engaged in for over the past 2 years with a number of our members to produce a book that's now available through Africa World Press, the Appropriate Technology Manifesto, a collection of chapters, papers written by our different members, including an exciting chapter headed by Brian Stevenson and his team on appropriate technology and agriculture. And I'm sure he'll address some of the elements in that chapter today. The fourth webinar was held last month. Prof. Mamumuchi gave an exciting presentation on appropriate technology, ontological, epistemic, and axiological virtue with Ubuntu to excavate and revive the rich indigenous knowledge roots in Africa to include in the education system. So that was quite a title and quite a webinar. Now, I want everybody to note that the recordings of all of our webinars are available on our website, www.appropriatetech.net. So these are all available. You can get them. They're basically set up through a YouTube channel. So I'd encourage you to view our past webinars. Now we will, after this session, be editing a version of this to also make it available through our website. So this is a bit about our seminar series and a little bit about INAT. I'll turn it over.
Thank you very much, Prof. And thank you for that opening remarks. And this is to add to what Prof has said. INAT is international. If you have passion for appropriate technology and you're seeing on the screen what it means to be appropriate, you can join us. Please check on the website and try to be a member. The discussion for the development of Africa or the continent is not for one person. It has to be a collective effort. So please join us. And we would start. But before I start, I want to remind us that throughout history, gatherings of great minds like these have changed the world. They have transformed the way we see ourselves and each other. They have inspired debate, war, and revolution. They have enlightened, outraged, provoked, and comforted. They have enriched lives and destroyed them. We hope that this discussion will provoke great thinkers like you to help fashion a new garment that will shake the new civilization we all dream to have. So I would like to welcome the first speaker today, in the person of Professor Gordon Nguka. Prof, are you around, please?
Yes, I'm around.
All right.
I'm hearing you loud and
Okay.
clear.
Thank you very much, Prof. But before I give you the mic, I would like to say something brief about Prof. Professor Gordon Nguka is an associate professor of the nutritional sciences, specializing in clinical nutrition and dietetics. Serves at Masinde Muliro University of Science and Technology in the Department of Nutritional Science, a registered consultant in Kenya for clinical nutrition and dietetics. Is involved in various impact roles, nominated to the Project Advisory Group for Healthy Foods Africa, lead consultant for Universal Health Coverage Framework Development with AMRIF, and elected chairman president of the African Nutritional Sciences Research Consortium. From July 2018 to date, Professor Nguka is running a collaborative research grant with Bioversity Kenya through his university in food system in Vihiga County. Please welcome Prof. Gordon as he speaks on the topic, Cultivating Health and Harmony, exploring the impact of food choices with well-being and the environment. Welcome, Prof. Over to you.
Good evening. We are going to discuss very seriously on cultivating health and harmony by exploring the impact of food choices that we make on personal well-being and the environment. And we said each one of us is what we eat. The way you are is exactly what you have been taking in over a period of time. And we are going to realize what that means. In my talk, I will focus on some areas which I will invite everyone to look at. What is the origin of food, for example? And the origin of food is within the environment. And that brings the aspect of environment. As that we talk currently, we have an aspect of One Health, which means the health that we have is influenced by the environment and is also influenced by the foods that we eat, which is mainly animals and plants. If you look at the aspect of origin of food, we have what we eat from the environment, mainly focusing on plants and animals. But you'll also agree with me that we also consume fungi, and we are able to consume bacteria, and we are able to consume algae. All these emanate from the environment. Many people and many communities have been having different practices and food choices that have been determined by cultures, depending on environment where we come from. Now, based on those environments, every person adopts the food systems that they were born in. And based on that, we have what many people refer to as indigenous food systems. So each one of us emanate from a culture, and that culture has determined our role and food choices that we've been able to adopt over time. Now that has tended to influence many things, including our health. Food systems, for example, I want to give the African food systems. And in this case, let me pick a case study of Kenyan indigenous systems to be able to also associate with other indigenous systems. Many a times in Africa, we tend to eat almost food that are tending to relate to each other. But the quantities and varieties has been determined and closely relates to environment from where we come from. There are, in nutrition and dietetics, we use something called food group pyramid to be able to group foods, mainly to help us understand the contribution of those individual foods into our bodies. Now, the food grouping system is different from nutrients. However, there's been a confusion between the food grouping system and the nutrients that they provide. For example, there has been a very long-serving misnomer on the fact that when somebody talks about protein, then there is a general imagination that that is mainly meat. While from the nutrition and dietetics perspective, that is not true, that meat may not necessarily be protein. And also there is also another aspect that, an understanding that when somebody talked about breads and cereals, for example, maize, rice, then there is an imagination that that is energy, or I can call it carbohydrates as such. But when you go deep into the food science of the same, you will realize that those foods I've mentioned are not necessarily providing carbohydrates. They are also providing amino acids and by this extension, proteins. Now that then led to the formation of a grouping system called food group. And we now have African food group that guides us, which is divided into the following areas. We have had milk and milk products, which is being used. We also have the vegetables, we have the bread and cereals, we have the fruits, and we have the fats, and then the sugars. That constitute what we refer to as the food groups. Foods are usually sources of nutrients. When you go deep into foods, you realize that they don't only provide nutrients, but there are other chemicals that are also found in them, some of which can be of medicinal value. And I'll be able to jump into a few. So whenever we take food, we take nutrients, but we also take other components, especially from plants. We call them phytochemicals or other chemicals. A number of chemicals that we find in food, which are mainly plants and animals, are actually composition of the environment where we live in. And therefore, that brings the close connection between the types of food that we eat, the environment, and by extension, the kind of health that we will have. Because we take food within our bodies, they are digested, broken down into particles, and those smaller particles are referred to as nutrients. We have a total of 56 nutrients, 2 of which are basically fats or come from fats, which is called glycerol and fatty acids. We have carbohydrates. There are 5 of them that will find themselves into our bodies in the simplest term, which is mainly glucose, galactose, fructose, and ribulose and mannose, 5 of them. We have a total of 16 micronutrients, 16 minerals from the micronutrients group. And we have a total of about 14 vitamins. As that we talk, of course, a number of researches are still going on. And most of these vitamins find themselves in various forms, and minerals also find themselves in various forms, both in the general environment and within the clinical area of practice. All that comes from the food that we eat. But as I've said, food is beyond just nutrients. It will also have some phytochemicals, most of which are also important and constitute some medicinal value to our systems. And that has been lived on by our people or our indigenous people of Africa for the longest time. I will mention a few plants that contributes and some specific foods that sometimes have some technical medicinal value that has been used in the African culture, just a few. So based on that, you can now see the connection between the environment we live in, the foods that we take, and our overall health. I will not review the facts that those nutrients that I've talked about are actually emanating from the environment or from the soils. Those soils nutrients are converted to edible nutrients by humans through mainly plants as the primary source. And you know, plants uses energy mainly from the sun, carbon dioxide, water, and chlorophyll to be able to generate for us a number of nutrients or incorporate, which we then find through the various animals and the plants themselves that constitute our food. And therefore, the glucose that we find ourselves having has been primarily generated by the plants, which are ranging from vegetables and the fruits that we have or we constitute in our diet. Now, if I move a bit into some of the foods that we find ourselves having in Africa, and I will just mention a few. I've already talked about the vegetables, milk and milk products, the breads and cereals, and I talked about meat and meat alternatives, and the meat alternatives having pulses. This grouping is just important. Currently in Africa, we also have something called edible insects. And if you come to Kenya, for example, in the western part where I live in, edible insects has constituted an additional composition of diet and is now being encouraged as a very good source of proteins that is going to help us diversify our diet. We also have edible fungi and edible algae, particularly spirulina is now constituting a diet of many, many communities. And then we have lipids and sugars. So based on that, I've already indicated minerals that we have. Based on that, I will just focus on some particular foods that we have in African settings, some which are indigenous. I've said if you were to come to Kakamega, we have a particular plant referred to as mukombero in our language or in the language of the Western Kenya, but the biological name is called Mondia whitei. Mondia whitei has been used as a very important plant, which is being used in enriching foods, the number of nutrients, and it has been found to be rich in a number of minerals. And when added into food, is helpful in stimulating our appetite of feeding. So for those who lacked, appetite, we never used to go for multivitamins that we buy from the supermarket or from the pharmacy, but you'd go for Mondia whitei and an individual would return back his appetite because of richness in vitamin B, particularly B1, B6, and B12, and a bit of niacin, vitamin B3. So based on that, the Africans were able to sort out the issue of lack of appetite. Now, the other factor is, as we have continuously interacted with communities from various parts of the world into our indigenous systems, we have tended to change our diet. And that tendency has led us into diets that are rich mainly in carbohydrates and a bit of, I can say mainly carbohydrates in various forms. Highly fried foods like breads and cereals. And at the end of it all, that has led to an increase into energy intake. And as you know, our food, our body system has been tuned to be able to use the easiest energy source. And in this case, the easiest energy source is the carbohydrate. The only disadvantage we have is that the carbohydrate, once taken into the body, excess of it is actually converted into glycogen. And excess glycogen then will be converted into fats, which are stored into the various parts of the body, mainly the liver. And sometimes we tend, when we overconsume carbohydrates, especially in the evening hours when you do not need too much energy, the body converts that into fats, and fats are stored in the liver. And some of us, over a period of time, will tend to dispose fats in the various parts of the body. For women, we call it gynoid distribution of fat, which will tend towards the gluteus region and bit of the abdomen. For the men, the android distribution mainly in the liver and the upper abdomen. And that has contributed to a lot of issues because your body shape will change. And at the end of it all, you lose the ability to be able, or for those organs to be able to function. And then at the end of it all, it leads to various non-communicable diseases, including inability of the body to be able to use glucose effectively. The cells, once are covered with a lot of fat, then the tendency to be able to respond to the code information or signaling of insulin from the pancreas becomes difficult. So you develop what we call insulin resistance, or just inability of the cells to respond to insulin and therefore lead to uptake of glucose is reduced. Now that then will lead to diabetes mellitus. Mainly, we call it the non-insulin dependent diabetes mellitus, which actually can be treated, can be managed by pure diet, even without going to insulin. You go into clinical dietetics. If you reduce or get into some process called ketogenic diet, and you reduce, you engage the body to be able to use the already stored source of energy, or use mainly fat, or convert fat, to train the physiological body to use the fat as a source of energy, then that occasionally or many times resolve itself over a period of time. You'll also agree with me that high levels, fruits are good, and I would be able to say, but high consumption of fruits would contribute to a sugar, very important sugar there called fructose. Saying that sometimes fructose then can lead to also sugar accumulation or fructose accumulation in the liver, and that can easily lead to fatty liver. So excess consumption of fruits can also be dangerous. Lastly, there are some very important food additives that I can talk about. For example, ginseng. So for those of you who understand, and we have onions and tomatoes. Now these are very important additives, food additives, and the groceries that we can be able to introduce in our diet, partly because, and I will talk to this as my final remark in relation to sickle cell. Okay, in relation to sickle cell, I was talking about any person who has suffered, for example, clot, traveling thrombus, or for some reason, DVT, deep venous thrombosis, or any thrombus, any clot for that matter, and has been prescribed on drugs that we call them anticoagulants. Now, those are individuals who need to take a lot of onions, garlic, and tomatoes. The reason is these foods I've mentioned, as I talked about it before, are not only having nutrients, but are having some important phytochemicals that are very helpful in supporting anticoagulation effect, and therefore will help in reducing the impact of those blood clot. And therefore we recommend them for every person that is prone to blood clotting, including people suffering from sickle cell. So in a nutshell, you are what you eat, and that the food choices you make over time contributes to the shape that you see yourself in today. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Prof. we are really what we eat. And I'm wondering, why did we start this discussion by discussing about nutrition? If we do not understand the kind of things we need to grow to help our health and to avoid diseases, we would keep farming for commercial use without putting ourselves into consideration. And I know you have questions for Prof, but I would indulge you to please send in your questions on the chat, and then we would open the floor for that much later, because I would like us to take all the discussants and then we can now leave the room to discuss as long as we want. So please take note of your questions and we will come back to you. Our second speaker is in the person of Brian Stevenson, who is a mentor and a friend. Just indulge me to say a little about him. Brian Stevenson is a registered civil structural engineer in the US and the president of Passion of Hope International, a non-governmental organization sustainably empowering rural communities in Africa, Kenya, and Nigeria, and now DRC. Is also the CEO of DHA East Africa, a sustainable planning and development consultancy based in Nairobi, Kenya. His expertise includes civil engineering, project management, strategic planning, development economics, history, and regenerative agriculture. He is a founding member of the International Network on Appropriate Technology. Mr. Stevenson believes we all share a responsibility to be stewards of our planet and lifters up of the people communities that inhabit it. He has traveled extensively in Africa and Latin America, observing, learning, and sharing on the ecologic and economic positives of cradle-to-cradle design, biomimicry, and sustainable agriculture. Please welcome Brian Stevenson as he speaks on the topic, the Smart Sustainable Agricultural City, the New Paradigms for Rural Development in Africa. Welcome, Brian.
Hi, welcome everybody, and I thank you for joining us on this fifth INAT seminar. As Mariam introduced, my topic is the Smart Sustainable Agricultural City, New Paradigms for Rural Development in Africa. The previous speaker, Professor Gordon Nguka, is in his other hat, he is chairman of the new municipality of Ndiwa in Homa Bay County, Kenya. So the two of us are actually partners in this journey to develop the Smart Sustainable Agricultural City. The area is a rural area, and the model that we have been developing together speaks to this new paradigm that I'm going to present about. This is a quick definition of agriculture, and we can talk about that later. But essentially, we're trying to feed ourselves and at the same time meet the ecological balance that makes it good for the next environment. Sustainable agriculture requires not just political control, but understanding that there's also economic control that dictates how things occur in our different countries. And this is particularly true in Africa. The fact that I may be head of state does not necessarily mean that I'm able to control how things go. Some of this is unfortunate, but this is the battle that we are in. I'm also going to quote Julius Nyerere, who emphasized in his years in Tanzania that the people have to be involved if real development takes place. It's not just about infrastructure, but it's also about, it's about empowering our people. So the question is for agriculture, what changes it that we want to see take place? And there's some main points that I wanted to bring out in this presentation. Number one, we each should know where our food is coming from. To many of those in Africa, this is something that's very clear, but more and more it's becoming unclear. For those of us in the United States, most of us are often clueless. You go to the grocery store and you simply buy, you have no idea how it's made. You don't have no idea how it was packaged. And this particularly came to mind years ago. I was in a taxi cab in the US, and my driver was from Afghanistan, and he made the point to me that he's been in the country for over 20 years, but he has never went to the McDonald's or to restaurants. He always gets his food. He drives to Lancaster area of Pennsylvania, where the Amish are, and he goes to the farm and he buys the cow. He buys the goat, he buys the chickens, he buys his eggs, and he knows where it's coming from. Particularly fascinating idea to me, because I never gave thought to find out where did this food come from. The second point is that we do need to correlate the diseases in our society with what we eat. And this is part of the reason Professor Gordon spoke earlier. The non-communicable diseases that we are experiencing in the developed Western world are now moving into the lesser developed nations, particularly in Africa. And the reason is that our diets are becoming more and more processed and disconnected with the natural processes of how food is prepared. And so we have diseases such as diabetes, such as cancer, and other respiratory and cardiovascular diseases. Number three, I want you to hopefully understand that economic dependency on inputs of production probably should be avoided. It adds a significant amount of cost to the smallholder farmers, which make up most of the continent of Africa. And when we do that, there creates now an economic dependency. Simply put, I used to think that when I had a seed, such as the flower from a sunflower, I simply needed to just plant it in the ground and it would bring up more flowers. But this is not the case with bioengineered products. They are done in a lab, and the seed must be purchased over and over again, as well as some of the other inputs for farming. Number four, we need to live in sync with the environment. We could talk about that later, but this is something that's easily understood by most of us, that when we are in harmony with the environment, and that's part of the reason the picture is on there, everything works in synergy. And then lastly, recognize that we are in a global village, and we should have this community of care for one another, not just within our own nations, but within the entire global village. What is particularly true here is that when we talk about climate change, it is the one part of the world who has been destroying the environment now has a major significant impact on other parts of the world. So in this design for what we are looking for, I have some bullet points here. I'll quickly touch on some of them, but certainly number one is that we work with nature. We let nature do the heavy lifting because it is designed to do that. And when we start cutting trees, when we poison the ecosystem, we are destroying nature and preventing it from doing what it normally should do. We are about educating our youth in agriculture in particular, and looking for ways to include them into an agricultural economy. When we don't do that, we have the massive migration from rural areas to our overpopulated cities. We are learning about food sovereignty, that every local community should be in control of what's happening and what they eat. And so when we design a agricultural city, we are looking to close the gap between where food is produced and when it gets to your plate. There are some other points here which you can read for yourselves. But ultimately, we're trying to include in this idea of an agricultural city, include the smallholder farmers, the medium scale farmers, and integrate them into the national economy. Just because I am a farmer does not mean that I'm integrated into the economy or contribute to the GDP. And one way to do that is by creating added value. So what we're trying to do is build resilience at the ground up. So in this idea of an agricultural city, it is lifting up from the bottom. And that means empowering our farmers to be more productive and make more money. And when they make more money, a lot of the good things that we're looking for start to take place. And so I have here appropriate technologies as an intervention are going to look at some of these areas, such as the last mile between the farmer and the processing center, looking at value addition and looking at best ways to educate the farming community, which is not just somebody on a farm, but it also has the high-tech component, including research. And we are looking, particularly in this agricultural city, to bring in through 5G technology, extended reality, and AI-assisted learning. This graphic was done about 10 years ago, where I was looking at biomimicry, which is to imitate nature and say, what does nature suggest to us in terms of how a community should be? And in this case, it was based on the cell. It was called Cells for Change, and this is what a cell does. So how can we learn from the cell's design in our bodies as to what our communities should be? And in green, we have a couple of those things. The fact that we should be able to replicate ourselves, the fact that we should be able to repair ourselves, as well as commerce and growth. The cell has signaling where it is communicating both within itself as well as with other cells. And so some of these ideas have formed into this idea of an agricultural city. This graphic is showing a couple things. One is the green bubble on the left is saying we have a rural area that has some small towns, some small villages. How do we turn this into an agricultural city? And in the case of Ndiwa in Western Kenya, this is the model that we are trying to replicate. We are maintaining the green, which is the agricultural spaces, the smallholder farms that are there, as well as maybe even some commercial farms that are there. But then we are integrating them into the local economy. We're also creating town centers, in this case, T1 to T5. These are defined areas that will be called urban, that is within the agricultural space. Generally, the way we think of things is there's an urban area, and then far, far away, miles or kilometers away, is the agricultural rural areas. In the case of the agricultural city is itself the city with the towns embedded within it, with value addition and the benefits of recycling. This graphic is quickly showing what the smart city elements may be, where it's using technology and the Internet of Things to make us more efficient, both in terms of how we mobilize ourselves, how we govern ourselves, and how we feed ourselves. I'm coming to an end here. Looking at appropriate technology in agriculture. On the left are some bullet points about what we would want from appropriateness. And when you design this type of a model, you get a direct benefit from it, as well as some indirect benefits to that. This other graphic is showing you that on the SDGs, there are 17 SDGs, or Sustainable Development Goals, from the United Nations on the left. The letter A stands for a high correlation, and C maybe not so high. And what you're seeing is wherever there is an A, through these processes of restoring the ecological balance, using regenerative agriculture, and embracing food sovereignty, we are meeting almost all of the Sustainable Development Goals. And so this graphic lends itself into the criteria for the design of the sustainable agricultural city. I just noticed a typo on sustainable. So we're emphasizing value addition. When we have cashew, we want to also process and make the, not cashew, palm. We also want to make the palm oil. And also from the palm oil, we want to take the waste and turn it around and regenerate both into fertilizer as well as into energy. The same thing with cultivating bamboo. We can turn that into construction products. We can turn it into energy. We can turn it into even textiles. In this smart, sustainable agricultural city, there's a long list of things of what we're planning to accomplish. The ones in yellow were the ones I thought I would bring some attention to. Again, waste regeneration into energy, supporting small businesses, creating trade centers, engaging the community, using green infrastructure. And the last one, stormwater management, there's an idea that we are learning from the Chinese cities called sponge cities, where the city is designed as a sponge to soak up the rainwater and capture it. That is the end of my presentation, and I thank you all for listening and sharing with me.
Thank you very much, Brian. This is just a reminder for us to please send in questions on the chat so that we can move fast. The next discussant is Guillen from Nabaya, is also Guillen Nabaya. Guillen is a certified agricultural specialist from the University of Virginia, excels in project planning and management, focusing on renewable clean energy and sustainable food systems. With a decade of leadership experience, he founded the Nabaya Food Institute in 2020, recognized in 2023 for innovation in water and energy for food by WE4F. This international initiative is supported by various entities, including the German Federal Ministry for Economic Cooperation and Development, the European Union, and USAID. Guillen's institute aims to empower local farmers through cooperative efforts, addressing poverty, hunger, and climate change while promoting access to clean energy and resilient food systems. Please help welcome Guillen as he speaks on the topic, Wealth in Waste, Harnessing Appropriate Technology for Sustainable Agriculture and Beyond. I will be sharing his presentation now.
Thank you very much, Mariam. Thank you very much to all the participants. Guillen Nabaya. I'm the chair director and the founder of the Nabaya Food Institute, based in the Democratic Republic of Congo. And I am the country director of Passion of Hope International, DRC. My topic is wealth in waste, harnessing appropriate technology for sustainable agriculture and beyond. So before we talk about wealth to west or west to wealth, so we have to know what means wealth. Wealth is an accumulation of valuable economic resources that can be measured in terms of either real goods or money value. That's what we call wealth. You can have too many definitions of wealth, but that is a short one, which is what you have, which is valuable, either real goods, either value in money. Okay, I was saying waste is any substance discarded after primary use, or is worthless, or defective, and of no use. Which means, for example, you have the maize, and you have maize cobs. Cobs are of no use. Many of farmers, they throw them away because they can't use them. And these cannot be used either by human or animals. Those are waste. So as Brian was saying, my predecessor, he talked about, palm oil, and this is an example of some waste of the palm oil that Nabaya food turned into energy. Waste, as we can know it, can take many forms. It can be environmental waste, it can be food waste, it can be agricultural waste. Agricultural waste can be transformed into valuable resources. For example, through composting, waste material can be converted into organic fertilizer that improves soil health. And we can also make those food wastes, we can also, turn them through compost into renewable energy source like biogas. Agricultural wastes, when are carbonized, they can produce briquettes, and these briquettes can help us for cooking fuel. You know, in Africa, many countries, we rely on charcoal and firewood in cooking food. And when we get firewood or charcoal, we destroy forests and trees. But then at Nabaya Food, for example, we take this agricultural waste that we collect from farmer cooperatives and we process them using machines, and we get the briquettes, as you can see them there. And these briquettes are useful and very strong to cook food, even stronger than charcoal that we exploiting to destroy forests. Briquettes, as you can see them there, they are made using crops residue. And this is waste, which is not used for human consumption or for animal consumption. And this has no value, but then we cycle it by recycling and we turn it into energy. And this energy, this briquette can be sold and they can be economic, can bring economy into their smallholder farming and into other families that can save something according to what they were using. So waste is wealth. So it's not something that you can throw away, but it's something to collect and recycle into a new product. So how can you make then synergies to reach to appropriate technologies? This needs collaboration, as my predecessor, as Brian said. To get a city, you have agricultural waste, and this, you have to use an appropriate technology. Appropriate technology doesn't mean higher technology. This means a technology which is local and which is reliable and which respects the environment. Here, for example, when you collect, residue from agricultural and you process them, you are bringing two things to the economy and you're bringing two things to the ecology. First, the smallholder farmers who were drawing this, material to just throw them away, but then they are, they are cycling it and they are getting now a new product. And this product, through the partnership, the collaboration with the Nabaya Food, we collect those, waste from the farmer cooperatives and we process them. And at the end, we also give these same products to the smallholder farmer cooperative. So there is a win-win situation which creates wealth for the community. Strategies for scaling and replicating the success. When you are successful, you have to start small and in a given entity, because we know in Africa as well in the world, we have farmers everywhere around the world. What we eat is produced by farmers. And then when you are successful, you have to share information to other villages within your area or to other countries. So as farmers over there can also copy your role model and also start yielding waste into wealth to produce, money, to produce another product that can be sold, that can be commercialized, or that can be used in another way for human benefits. Thank you. So my presentation was that short because the people that talked before me took much time and I wanted it to keep it 7 minutes. Thank you very much.
Thank you
Questions?
very much, Ken. I really appreciate you keeping to time. Now to questions, and this is the floor is open to everyone. But first, I noticed there are some questions on the in the chat, and I would like to read it. This is from Sarah Gikoyo, and this is directed to Professor Nguka. She said, in regards to garlic and anticoagulants, are they recommended even when garlic is a natural anticoagulant? Could you answer Sarah's question?
Yes, I can handle that. From the nutrition and dietetics perspective, the anticoagulant composition of food complements the anticoagulant medicinal value and therefore is critical when using. In fact, in what we refer to as creative dietetics, clinical dietetics practice within the clinical area, when patients are on anticoagulants, be it warfarin or acetylsalicylic acid, then from a dietetics perspective, you better prescribe intake for garlic, onions, or tomatoes, for that matter. By the way, even garlic, ginseng. In the hospital, you'll find ginseng in the form of gimsomin sometimes. So that will help and complement the effect of anticoagulants. It is a natural anticoagulant, but it will also support the therapeutic aspect of it and facilitate quick recovery of the patient by enhancing the anticoagulation effect.
Thank you, Prof. The next question is from Mary Omega, and this is directed to Brian. And she said, in regards to smart sustainable agriculture, do you have plans in place to preserve organic seeds?
Good question, Mary. Organic seeds are actually under threat. In particular, within the past week, there has been news about the East African community embracing genetically modified seeds. I believe one of the exceptions is still Tanzania, where they are adamant about protecting their seeds. Seeds is important simply because, as I mentioned, you don't just take the seed of a fruit and put it back in the ground if it's GMO. It won't work because it was done in a lab. So within the smart, sustainable city, preserving the indigenous seeds is going to be a priority to the best of our ability. Yes.
The floor is open Could you, I would like to see a sign of hands up so you could have the mic and get the discussion started. Okay, in the absence of questions, there's one that I would like to ask, and this is to the floor, to all the discussants. How do we see the effect of commercial farming and in correlation to our health?
Yes, I'm a board member of INAT, and also with our brother, Professor John Trimble. We wrote the book mostly with a very good contribution from our brother on appropriate, this, I think we should probably have a time also for it to be launched in a very nice way. But I have been, whenever I get invited to different places, I have been promoting the book. I got a few copies, so I was doing that. And now this topic is very, very, very good. This for agriculture for sustain. In Africa, we are our economy is mainly agriculture based, and our rural people are also many. And then there are many, many also products that are created, indigenous products that are created. For example, in the country where I was born, we produce what we call teff. It's a kind of crop that others are taking away from us. The foreigners have taken it, and they are producing it also in different parts, almost in different parts of the world, and they are using it. How could we also control this indigenous one? Because this product I just mentioned to you, TF, it's they call it even anti-cancer, it's medicinal. And because we have crops like that, is there, and our uncultivable land in Africa is very high, the agricultural land. Over 70% of our land is still, which could be cultivated, is not cultivated. How could, I'm just asking all of you, this is a question to all of you, how could we, prioritize this very, also our people in the rural areas, what they know, and then add very good innovation to actually create a sustainable agriculture for African development, and create a new supply chain, value chain, and so on, to really motivate all our people, and then make agriculture really the most important development, sustainable development pathway to be used.
Thank you, Prof. Brian, or Prof, would you like to answer that? Brian?
I can answer, but I think there are many people on this call, and I'd like them to answer first.
Okay.
If anyone else on the call would like to respond to Professor Mamo's question, please jump in.
Matthias has his hands raised. Please go ahead, Matthias.
Whereby you have to come up with policies, if possible, have advocacy groups that have been set up. So the moment you have them in place, you can come up with measures and, if possible, even standards on how to control and ensure that anyone who engages in handling of the seeds is able to give out documentation, and even you're also capable of tracing where the seeds are going to and how they're in circulation. So through the policies which are passed into law, they can help control that.
Thank you, Matthias. Any other person would like to add to that comment? I can see Kode Yadama.
How are you?
Fine.
Yeah, I'm speaking to you from the Republic of the Gambia, West Africa.
Pleased to have you on call.
Thank you very much. In regard to organic seeds in terms of management, in the case of the Gambia, as an example, since independent, we've been depending on the colonial laws that we have. Of recent, the Minister of Agriculture set up what we call National Seed Secretariat. The National Seed Secretariat is now responsible of coordinating, managing, and controlling as to what comes in the country and what goes out. And secondly, in as much as we want, in as much as we want to have improved seeds, we are also preserving the indigenous seeds to make sure we have them in production system. Because what we are realizing and observing is if we don't do that in the long run, we're going to be depending on the multi-corporation companies in terms of seed provision, and that's going to be another form of colonization through agricultural value chain. So as a strategy, nations can do that. Put up units or departments or institutions that will be responsible of control and managing seeds internally as what comes in, what goes in, and secondly, replenishing seeds that would use their genetic viability. That's the approach we have in the Gambia. The next question I want to have is with regard to Gillian, waste as well. In the Gambia, through the support of ECOWAS, we now have what we call ecology training centers, where we train farmers on sustainable agriculture. I would like to ask whether it's possible to have collaboration in case we need such technology in terms of waste management. Well, that's the approach we are going to be using to train farmers as how to manage agricultural waste within the communities and in the gardens to reduce their dependency on imported inputs to reduce costs as well as to preserve the environment. That's the question I have. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Jadama. Gian, will you answer that?
Yes, of course. Mr. Jadama is concerned of if we can make a collaboration, if you can have a collaboration with their community in terms of waste management or how to turn waste into valuable inputs. Of course, this is what I said at the last slide of my presentation. We need collaboration, partnership, so that we make sure the appropriate technology is used. So this is welcome. I think I can share my email address and you can write to me a message or to anyone of Passion of Hope, and we can develop this further.
All right, thank you very much, Gian. Joanna has her hands up, but before then, I would like to read from the comment, and this is from Fate. She says, for organic seeds, visit Seed Savers Network Kenya. If you're in Kenya, they are doing a good job of preserving seeds, of preserving this organic seeds. So thank you for that, Fate, and I hope we can all get to that. So Joanna, please go ahead.
Hello, everyone. I'm talking to you from Lebanon. I'm also part of DHEEA, on behalf of which Brian was speaking today, and Mariam as well. So I'm happy to be with you. One thought that came to me is that the problem of GMO, we also had that in Lebanon. And the transference of using GMO was done even prior to the civil war, so it's been used a long time ago. At the same time, we still have organizations that have been protecting the native organic seeds. So we have, for example, an organization called Buzuruna Juzuruna, which translates into our seeds, our roots. And they preserve the organic seeds. So I think it comes with like personal effort, personal initiatives of people, of indigenous people, of local people to conserve their native plants, their native seeds, and their organic farming traditions. So this is one thing. So that we need to give value to that in terms of community in order to preserve it. At the same time, I love the idea of really reflecting on the idea of wealth and waste. I thought that was very valuable because it also speaks to nature and to ecology and to the way that we mimic life actually. Because in life, the idea of waste doesn't exist. Waste is always a product for another organism, and it always transforms to something that is useful. And that's why I feel like if we're to develop our cities or our agricultural cities, we really need to think about the life cycles of everything that we're creating. Even our crops, I mean, how will they transform their byproducts? How will they be useful? And what I feel is important also, the important component to engage in a new agricultural city is the youth, because if we are talking about technology, that means that you are talking about research and development. So we want to have young people who are just who are studying, who are newly grads, to really be actively engaged in finding new solutions. So that's why creating a startup community around all those challenges that relate to creating agricultural byproducts, to protecting nature, to also to protecting and restoring native plants, native ecological restoration. We need to involve them in also finding solutions, also always having the means to experiment and develop their ideas and solutions to create new businesses that could be viable to the sustainable ecological city or agricultural city. So that's the main idea. I feel like really startups, symbiosis with community in order to preserve what is valuable in terms of our native agricultural agriculture and natural ecosystem, while at the same time putting really life above profit. Profit needs to serve life and not the opposite. So this is what I had to say. Thank you so much. It was really a beautiful speech, beautiful conference. I loved everything that each person had inputted.
Thank you very much, Joanna. We really appreciate that coming all the way from Lebanon. The floor is still open. We have 5 more minutes to discuss. So please, you have the floor. Let's hear you say something.
I have a question for Brian in related to the smart city. This is something, you know, I've had interest in terms of my computing background for years. Could you say something about how e-governance could fit into the smart city, particularly the way you have the connection between the villages on one hand and then actually the agricultural component in terms of and also the fact that you're engaging in this with a direct relationship with those responsible for governance in that area. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Yes, we realized in the planning that simply having a good plan without having the government structure or the governance structure also aligned with it was critical. And so working with the municipality, there is a board of which Professor Gordon is chair. There's also the municipality manager, which is like a mayor, and he will have his staff. And so one of the first things that we intend to do is to have essentially a retreat, because we see that we're cultivating a new generation of young leaders for this municipality to bring them in line with the values that the master plan is affirming. The last thing we want is 3 or 4 years into the process that new leadership takes place and they are not in line with these policies. So that is part of it, and I'll ask Professor Gordon to chip in. On the technology side, it is about transparency. It is about citizens being able to know through the internet where their land is, what the boundaries are, as well as seeing what is happening in the governance. So community engagement would have to also be tech savvy so that everyone from the local farmer, maybe even through, if he does not have a smartphone, through simple SMS, should be able to be connected. The other part of this is that most of the communities within Africa are governed by local chiefs and other officials who the people know, even I would say priests or pastors. And so connecting with them so that there is a strong base for governance is going to be important. Professor Gordon, do you want to chip into that comment, to those remarks?
Yes, yes, very important. Thank you very much. Actually, you've already alluded to it, engaging the government, not just the government, but within the Kenyan system, we have the population as well. And therefore, within the municipality, is you are planning and putting up smart city, smart, sustainable agricultural city. There is the overall engagement in terms of governance structure, of authority, but also the citizenry, what we refer to as the citizen forum, which has been engaged as well, so that there is an overall ownership of the system, and then it in itself brings the sustainability because the individuals take up their role in terms of developing the city sustainably. Now, that aspect, the other thing is for implementation of any development agenda within the area, the governance structure has to come in place because of the authorities that are required within such specific jurisdiction. And therefore, approach of integrating plans by development partners into government systems and rather than working just in isolation makes it easy for the processes to move through. Brian will appreciate or can tell you that for you to implement anything within an existing jurisdiction, then if it is not properly approved, you may not even end up having anything. So that integration and being part of the system as you do the plans becomes a critical component. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor Nguka. Any other question before we give the floor to the INAT president to have his closing remarks, or if he wants to?
James Odaba has a question, Mariam.
Oh. Okay, sorry. Yes, this is from James Odaba at gmail.com. And the question is, do any of you suffer problems with regulators and certification authorities in your countries? How do you address this in order to comply with the Nagoya Protocol of the CBD on benefits and sharing of these seeds for utilization? Who would like to respond to James?
Yeah, well, I have to say, let me just say that regulation in any jurisdiction, government take control of regulation, and they influence the flow of seeds. For example, as you've said, for you to be able to provide seeds in any jurisdiction for that matter, in Kenya included, there are a number of regulations that you have passed through, including even as that we talk, they just continuously adding biosafety controls becomes an important aspect. So KEFIs, and that is for Kenya, they play that role, and sometimes this bogs down people who are supposed to participate in ensuring that you have the preservation of indigenous seeds and are able to disseminate them as well. However, despite those facts, some of them are basically important to be able to control the potential invaders of the same system that you could be having. Therefore, it is important to actually rely on it and be able to comply, but at the same time ensure that there is sanity in the process. So I think as a country, Kenya, and many Kenyans who are here will appreciate those regulations are there and they inhibit the process. The last part of the question was, let me just check how that does, the last part of the question, the Nagoya Protocol, CBD benefits sharing. Now, this, in every service provider, there must be some signing of memorandum of understanding or memorandum of agreement with the local authority, so that can ensure all issues around the aspects of benefit sharing are also handled. So every service provider, in this case, seed distributors or seed bankers for that matter in organization, if they have signed the memorandum of understanding with the local authorities, usually there is no problem. The distributors, the seed bankers and service providers within that context usually have signed agreements to be able to ensure that those benefit sharing activities are incorporated. That's what I think is happening. But as he has said and has been its concern, those regulations exist, and Kenya is included as those that suffer the high level of regulation.
All right, please, I would like to welcome back again Professor John Trumbull to give us his closing remarks and talk a little about our forthcoming international conference on appropriate technology. Please, over to you, Prof.
Well, thank you, Miriam. I want to start by thanking all of the participants and attendees here at today's webinar. This is a great turnout. And those of you who are not already members of INAT, I really would encourage you to go to our site and sign up and join. Just briefly, I want to go over the 4 objectives of INAT. The first being that of developing an international network of appropriate technology researchers and practitioners committed to assisting the poorest of communities, particularly the Global South. So this is where I see all of you have been engaged in, from the discussions, from the questions you raised are in line with that. So if you aren't already a member, please join us. One of the aspects that we're dealing with regards to that engagement is our dedicated work toward impacting technology policy. If you go to our website, you'll see that we have an appropriate technology declaration that we initiated in 2010. And as Prof. Mucci mentioned earlier, he and myself co-edited a book called Appropriate Technology Manifesto that's now available. So this is all in line with our first objective in terms of engaging researchers and practitioners in this work. The second one of our objectives is supporting appropriate technology projects, particularly in terms of empowering and focusing on disadvantaged communities and focusing on people of color. We have most recently funded the project in Nigeria that Miriam is heading up. It's just partial funding. I mean, she's been doing a lot of great work with regards to others engaged with that. But we've also funded projects, supported projects in the Sudan, Kenya, South Africa, and Benin over the years. So this is one of the areas we're really excited about. And in fact, Brian Stevenson is the chair of our projects committee that addresses these things. The third area is related to this seminar, and this is our efforts in terms of organizing everything from local online seminars to regional workshops to our international conference. And you see displayed here the call for participation in our upcoming 11th International Conference on Appropriate Technology, which will be hosted in Johannesburg the November 25th through the 29th. You can go to our website and get more information, but as you see, the theme is building sustainable rural and urban cities for economic growth, enhancing health, and eradicating poverty. So a lot of what Brian Stevenson addressed today is very much in line with this theme in terms of building these rural cities that they're working on with his team. So this is the 4 points the fourth point actually is that we're looking at enhancing our website to actually making it a web portal that supports appropriate technology projects, communicates with other organizations and institutions that are engaged with this, so that it'll be much more than simply a website. So we encourage you to get involved with INAT. Last point I want to raise, and before I close, is a number of you have come with different exciting questions, different points of information with regards to appropriate technology. I would encourage you all to contact us and to join in on our webinar series. We are open to additional presentations. So any of you in the audience that want to give a talk linking appropriate technology based on the work you're doing, or if you have suggestions for additional topics in which we should organize webinars, please contact us and we'll put you on our schedule. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Prof. And I would like to re-echo what Prof has just said. If you're interested in our next webinar, when will that be, Prof? Do we have a date yet?
We schedule every second Thursday of the month. So that would mean the next one would be
Next month.
April the 11th.
Okay.
Would be the
So,
next date, and it's open. So please,
okay.
if you have any suggestions or anybody would like to volunteer, please let us know as soon as possible.
Possible.
April, May are both open. So please contact us.
All right. You're all at that, and we look forward to having you join us for the next webinar. It's been interesting. It's been interactive, and we look forward to you joining the next one and all of us being change makers, because I always say that we cannot continue to operate in silos. For the development of Africa, it has to be a collaboration. And I would re-echo what Professor Mamo would always say, is so particular about being Pan-African. And he would say the problem, the solution to African problems has to be by Africans. So this platform, Appropriate in Technology, it's a platform for us to start designing technologies that suit us and are appropriate to our continent. So please join us next time, and we look forward to hearing from you. You can reach out to me, check our website. You can reach out directly to Professor John, and we look forward to hearing from you. We look forward to seeing you in South Africa. It's still in November, but we hope that you all can join us and be a part of the conference. Thank you very much. Prof just posted his email, so please go ahead and reach out. And it won't be a bad idea if we can all see our faces. We're finished. So can we come online and let's see the smiley faces of each and every one of us? Yes. All right, good.
Unfortunately,
Professor Mamo, what happened?
Hello, I have a preoccupation. When I'm like to invite someone who speak French,
Oh,
I don't know
yes,
when.
I'm so sorry. That's true. We have French speakers here. Next time, would factor
Yeah,
that
just
in.
because yeah,
Professor John?
I'm living here in Canada. Someone can like to coming in another. I don't know the date who you say another meeting. It's this month or another month.
Next month. It's going to be next month on the 11th. So hopefully we would try and walk into the French
Just
speaker.
someone who
Yes.
speak French, you can come in. Okay.
All right. Thank you very much for bringing that to our knowledge. And we can see Mary, we can see Lynn Case, we see Gian, James. Oh, James Adaba. Obina,
Yeah.
Bifuna.
I actually
Oh.
don't have electricity. So
Oh, it's okay. So good to have you.
I see Dr. Sarah Olemba with James
Yeah,
Odab.
you know, you know, see, it is my passion.
I see it. I see it.
Thank
Oh,
you, thank you. You didn't invite
Yeah,
me, Brian.
no problem. We
Didn't
started off with Dr.
I
Mokami,
get,
but he was unable to make it.
yes, I get crushed. So just
Yeah.
thank God that James is here with me.
Oh,
Good to
that's
see you,
so good.
James.
Good to have you. Thank you,
Brought in.
everyone. Karibu. Asante sana.
Karibu.